The rain had turned the city into a blur of silver and gray, washing away colors, softening edges, making even the brightest storefronts look tired. He was used to beauty that demanded attention, heels clicking on marble floors, perfume lingering in elevators, laughter too loud and too polished to be real. But she was standing there, beneath the flickering bus stop light, holding a paper grocery bag close to her chest, her hair damp and unstyled, her dress plain and wrinkled from a long day. No makeup, no fancy dress, no effort to impress. And yet, he stopped. There was something in the way she leaned down to shield a stray kitten from the rain with her own sweater, something in the way she smiled at the trembling creature as if it were royalty instead of a nuisance. It was quiet, unnoticed, unadvertised. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this remind us that the most extraordinary hearts are often hidden in the most ordinary moments. Daniel Carter had spent the last 10 years chasing a different kind of perfection. At 34, he was the youngest executive partner at a rising architecture firm in the city. His suits were tailored, his schedule was suffocating, his relationships were brief and beautiful and ultimately hollow. He had dated women who looked like they had stepped off magazine covers, who knew which fork to use at five-star restaurants and how to pose under chandeliers. But every time he returned to his glass-walled penthouse overlooking the skyline, he felt an ache he could not name. He told himself it was ambition, exhaustion, the cost of success. But that night, watching a soaked stranger wrap her sweater around a shivering animal while rain soaked through her thin cotton dress, he felt something unfamiliar stir inside him. It wasn't desire in the way he was used to. It was curiosity, respect, a pull towards something steady and warm. The bus arrived, brakes hissing like a tired sigh. She stepped on carefully, still clutching the kitten inside her grocery bag, where it peeked out, curious and calm now. Daniel sat across from her, pretending to scroll through his phone while stealing glances. At the next stop, an elderly woman climbed on, struggling to keep her balance. Without hesitation, the girl stood up and offered her seat. She didn't look around to see who noticed. She didn't sigh dramatically. She just moved. Daniel watched the way she held the metal pole to steady herself, the way she smiled softly when the elderly woman thanked her. There was no performance in it, no calculation. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt small. Because he had everything money could buy, and yet he could not remember the last time he had done something kind without thinking about how it made him look. The bus rolled through neighborhoods Daniel rarely saw. Buildings became smaller, paint peeled from walls, streetlights flickered instead of glowing. When she stepped off, he hesitated, but something in him refused to let the moment dissolve. He followed again. She walked 3 blocks, turned into a narrow apartment building with chipped paint and a broken intercom. Before going inside, she paused beneath the awning, took the kitten out of the bag, and pressed her forehead gently to its tiny head, as if whispering a promise. Daniel didn't approach her that night. He didn't know why he had followed her in the first place. But as he stood in the rain, watching her disappear behind a worn wooden door, he realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, he was thinking about someone not because she was impressive, but because she was kind. The next morning, Daniel returned. He told himself it was coincidence. He had a site visit nearby. It was convenient, logical. But deep down, he knew he had altered his schedule just to walk past that building again. She emerged just after 8, wearing the same simplicity she had worn the night before. Her hair was tied back in a loose ponytail. She carried a canvas tote instead of a handbag. The kitten was nowhere in sight. This time, he approached her. Up close, he noticed a tiny scar near her eyebrow, a detail that would have been concealed beneath layers of makeup if she wore any, but she didn't, and somehow that made it more beautiful. "Excuse me," he began, surprised by how uncertain his voice sounded. She looked up, startled but not afraid. He asked something trivial, directions to a street he already knew. She answered politely, her voice soft but clear, no flirtation, no lingering glance, just kindness offered and then withdrawn as she prepared to leave. Before she could walk away, he asked her name. "Elena," she said simply. It fit her. Daniel introduced himself. He almost added his title, his company, something to establish his worth, but he didn't. For once, he let his name stand alone. He learned she worked at a small community clinic 2 streets over. Long shifts, minimal pay. She lived with her younger brother, Matteo, who was still in school. Their parents had passed away 5 years earlier in a car accident. Since then, she had become everything: sister, provider, protector. As she spoke, she didn't dramatize her struggles. She stated them as facts, like someone who had accepted life's weight without resentment. Daniel felt something shift inside him again. He asked if he could walk her to work. She hesitated, then nodded. The streets were uneven, puddles gathered in cracks. She navigated them with practiced ease. He noticed how people greeted her: an old man at the corner store, a mother pushing a stroller, a teenager with headphones around his neck. They all knew her, and she knew them. When they reached the clinic, she turned to him with a small smile. "Thank you for the company," she said. And that was it. No exchange of numbers, no expectations. Daniel stood there longer than necessary, watching her disappear behind a worn wooden door. For the rest of the day, he couldn't focus. Blueprints blurred, meetings felt hollow. His colleagues discussed profit margins and expansion plans, while his mind replayed the image of Elena kneeling in the rain to save a kitten. He realized something uncomfortable. He had spent years searching for someone polished, accomplished, impressive enough to match his success. But maybe he had been searching for the wrong thing. Maybe what he had been searching for was a heart like hers. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt both hopeful and afraid. Because real beauty, he was beginning to understand, required something he had never truly given before: humility.
Daniel began finding excuses to pass by the clinic. At first, it was coffee delivered by mistake, then a lunch break that lasted longer than necessary. Eventually, it became honesty. He asked her if she would have dinner with him. She looked at him carefully, as if measuring something deeper than his words. Perhaps she saw the expensive watch on his wrist, the polished shoes, the life he carried like an invisible shield. "I don't really go to fancy places," she admitted. "Neither do I," he said, surprising himself again. So instead of reservations at the city's finest restaurant, they ate at a small family diner 2 blocks from her apartment. The seats were cracked vinyl, the menu laminated and slightly sticky at the edges. But Elena laughed more there than any woman Daniel had taken to candlelit rooftops. She spoke about Matteo's dream of becoming an engineer, about patients at the clinic who couldn't afford medicine, about the kitten, now named Luna, who had quickly made herself at home. Daniel listened. Not the distracted listening he had mastered in boardrooms, real listening, the kind that made him forget to check his phone. Weeks passed. Slowly, carefully, Elena allowed him into her world. He met Matteo, a shy 17-year-old with intelligent eyes and guarded manners. He saw the cramped apartment with its mismatched furniture and walls decorated with old photographs. He noticed the bills stacked neatly on the kitchen counter, each one marked with careful calculations in blue ink. And for the first time in his life, Daniel saw struggle not as an abstract statistic, but as a daily reality. He wanted to fix everything. That was his instinct: to solve, to provide, to sweep in with resources and remove hardship like erasing pencil marks from a page. But Elena resisted. When he tried to pay for Matteo's school trip, she declined gently but firmly. When he offered to upgrade their apartment, she shook her head. "We're okay," she said, and she meant it. Her pride wasn't arrogance, it was dignity. Daniel realized that loving someone like Elena required something different, not grand gestures, not financial rescue. It required patience. Yet not everyone saw her the way he did. When Daniel finally introduced her to his social circle, the difference was glaring. The event was a charity gala hosted by his firm. Crystal chandeliers, silk gowns, tailored tuxedos, conversations laced with subtle competition. Elena wore a simple navy dress she had borrowed from a coworker. No diamonds at her ears, no stylist behind her transformation, just herself. Daniel thought she looked breathtaking, but whispers traveled faster than wine refills. Is she staff? Where did he meet her? She's simple. Daniel heard it all. He felt anger rise in his chest, sharp and protective. But before he could react, he noticed something else. Elena heard it too. Her shoulders stiffened slightly, her smile thinned, yet she remained gracious, answering questions politely, never revealing the hurt in her eyes. On the drive home, silence filled the car. Finally, she spoke. "I don't belong in your world." The words cut deeper than any insult at the gala. Daniel pulled over. "My world?" he repeated quietly. She looked out the window. "You shine there. I just stand out for the wrong reasons." For the first time, Daniel confronted a truth he had avoided. He had one foot in two different worlds, and if he wasn't careful, he would lose the one that mattered most. "I don't want that world," he said slowly. "Not if it means losing you." But love is not proven in speeches, it is proven in choices. And choices were coming. Daniel's firm offered him a promotion that required relocation abroad, a prestigious opportunity, a career-defining leap. Everyone congratulated him. Everyone assumed he would accept. Elena didn't say anything at first, but he saw the question in her eyes. Would he choose ambition or something quieter, harder, but more real? Nights became restless. He paced his penthouse, staring at the skyline he had once worshipped. The city glittered like a promise, success, recognition, wealth. But it also felt cold. He thought about Luna curling against Elena's side, about Matteo studying late into the night, about the way Elena's hand felt in his, steady and warm. He realized something that terrified him. He had built a life designed to impress everyone except himself. And now he had to decide who he wanted to be.
The morning of his decision, Daniel didn't go to the office. Instead, he went to the clinic. He found Elena in a small exam room, comforting a frightened child, while the mother wiped tears from her face. Elena's voice was calm, patient, filled with reassurance that cost nothing but meant everything. Daniel stood in the doorway, unseen. This was her world. Not glamorous, not applauded, but essential. When she stepped outside after her shift, she looked surprised to see him waiting. "I turned it down," he said. She blinked. "The promotion?" He nodded. "For me?" she asked quietly. "For me," he corrected, "because I don't want a life that looks perfect and feels empty." Tears filled her eyes, not dramatic, but honest. In that moment, Daniel understood something profound. Love wasn't about rescuing her from struggle. It was about standing beside her in it. Months later, he moved out of his penthouse, not into her small apartment, but into a modest place closer to the clinic. He shifted his focus at work, taking on community-centered projects instead of international expansions. He began volunteering time and resources quietly, without press releases or recognition. Matteo earned a scholarship, one he worked for relentlessly. Elena continued at the clinic, refusing to lose herself in comfort. Their life wasn't extravagant, it was better. On a warm spring afternoon, Daniel found himself back at that same bus stop where he had first seen her. The rain was gone, sunlight filtered through fresh leaves. Elena stood beside him, Luna, now healthy and mischievous, in Mateo's arms nearby. She still wore no makeup, no fancy dress, just a heart that chose kindness every day. Daniel looked at her and realized he hadn't saved her. She had saved him from a life of polished emptiness, from chasing admiration instead of meaning, from confusing beauty with value. If this story touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who still believes in genuine love. And before we end, tell us in the comments, do you believe true beauty is found in the heart rather than appearances? Because sometimes the person we almost overlook is the one we've been searching for all along. Daniel once thought he needed someone dazzling to complete his life, but what he needed was someone real, and she had been standing in the rain all along.